Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Eddington. And in the second half, I'm going to discuss the current state of movie trailers in theaters. So, starting off with Eddington. Oh, Ari Aster, you're a madman. For context, Ari Aster is the writer and director. He's made 4 feature films thus far: Hereditary, Midsommar, Beau is Afraid, and now Eddington. And I feel like it's fair to say that even the most praised films of his are controversial among moviegoers. And as for me, I think all of his films left me very conflicted when they ended. So I had to take time to digest them in my head and kind of let them marinate, I guess. Like, I needed to take just a couple days, just kind of like process it all, be like, okay, did I take anything away from that thing? Was it just weird for weird's sake or weird with purpose? And I'll say this: Hereditary went on to become my favorite horror movie of all time. It goes, gets better and better each time I rewatch it. The first time I walked out, I was like, what the heck was that? And then it just became brilliant the more I thought about it. It was great. Midsommar is a very good but disturbingly weird film. Similarly, like, felt kind of mixed when I walked out of it. Was thinking about it some more and just appreciated it more. I didn't think it was as good as Hereditary, but I got what it was going for. And then Beau is Afraid is similar to Midsommar, but it just kind of dials up the weird even more and just gets even crazier and just more bizarre. And where does that leave Eddington? Well, it's a movie I'm very mixed on. I mean, similar to the others. I mean, just coming out of it, I'm just very mixed. Like all of Astor's movies before it, I've been hoping to absolutely love it coming out, but I think this might be his most controversial film yet. The movie takes place in a small town in New Mexico during the height of COVID in May 2020. It follows a sheriff who is very much a dumb person and very unlikable person from the get-go. And the film tells the story about how this sheriff wants to run for mayor against someone who has very different opinions on politics and COVID. And if it doesn't sound controversial enough, especially considering how not long ago all this was, which, really, believe it or not, I mean, it's like 5 years ago, which may seem like a long time on paper, but it's really not that long ago. But believe me, the movie touches some very sensitive topics and goes in places I didn't expect it to go. Like, the best way to describe it is this movie just pours a ton of alcohol on a fresh wound. Because I don't think this world has completely recovered from the effects of COVID, the world that we live in. I don't think it's completely recovered yet. And I'm not even talking about the disease itself, which, I think will always be out there to some extent, but more so what it did to America as a country in particular, and even just the world, like how we reacted. And I'm not here to get political or anything like that. I'm not really interested in talking about politics on here, but because of the subject matter of the film, it's kind of hard to completely avoid talking about. But yeah, so anyway, this movie is kind of, in a sense, a commentary on how COVID has affected people and made everyone selfish and bitter and just completely disconnected from reality. And it's interesting in that sense. People believe what they want to believe, and they'll happily throw anyone under the bus who disagrees with them. That's really the meat of this movie, in my opinion. That's what it's kind of about. And I think people will take away a lot of different things from it, because Ari Aster is someone who makes his films divisive and subjective to different takes on what it's really trying to say. And his movies evoke this sense of anxiety and being uncomfortable the whole time, which I think is often what makes his films stand out. They're very intense and not in the way you're used to. Like, the whole movie just, like, it has this feeling of, like, uneasiness. Like, you're just like, oh, I feel very, like, awkward right now, very uncomfortable. And I think, I just want to put this out there. I think people associate the feeling of being uncomfortable as a negative. Like, people watched Uncut Gems, the Adam Sandler movie, and they thought it was just really bad because it was, like, making them anxious and uncomfortable the whole time. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think that can be a very good thing, actually, if it's doing it right. You just don't like feeling that way. So you kind of have to separate the two. Like, am I feeling uncomfortable because the movie's bad, or am I feeling uncomfortable because the movie wants me to feel that way? Ari Aster is more the latter. He wants you to feel uncomfortable. But kind of getting back to the film as a whole, I would say the first half is solid. It tackles COVID in a pretty satirical way that I found funny and accurate. I also enjoyed the angle of seeing these two guys battle it out for mayor. I thought that was pretty interesting. It kind of had just more energy to it. I like that energy. Where the film lost me, though, is mostly in the second half. And I guess even more specifically than that, the last third, which I would say fell apart very much. Like, the last third of the movie just completely lost me. It makes some choices that I thought were just completely out of left field and felt more like shock value than a natural progression of the story. Time will tell if I still feel that way by the end of the year. Maybe, maybe not. I would say most of Ari Aster's films, I could kind of get behind the endings a little more. I haven't rewatched Beau is Afraid, since it came out, but I remember the ending of that movie just completely throwing me for a loop. Same with Hereditary and Midsummer. All of those movies, like, the endings just are totally out of, left field. They're unexpected, but, sometimes on reflection, they do work more. And then on top of that, this movie is also incredibly long, clocking in at around 2.5 hours. And I wasn't really bothered by the pacing much until the second half came around, and it just felt like we were going in circles. Like, crazy things were happening, but they weren't really satisfying or built up to in any way. But I will say this. It's still a well-made movie in terms of the production value and look of it. It has some of the most effective uses of sound this year besides Warfare, and I can't even begin to say how good Joaquin Phoenix is in this movie. Like, he is really good. He's always great. That's not new. I really just think he's one of the best actors working today, but this performance of his was just insanely good, and I'd say on a similar level to what he did with Joker. Like, it's that good. And I think a lot of you will hear that and probably disagree with what I'm saying if you watch the movie, but I personally thought the amount of mannerisms and the kind of inflections in the voice, like the way he would look at people, was just spot on. Like, he just played a totally different person. Maybe it's because I've seen Joaquin Phoenix like outside of film and just watched him in interviews and stuff. It's just the way he does everything is so brilliant. I just thought, like, the way he would just look and he would talk, it was just perfect. I think he really might be like an Oscar-worthy performance in this. And I would just say he did such a good job that he actually kind of outshined his incredibly talented co-stars, Pedro Pascal and Emma Stone, who are both also some of the best actors working today, in my opinion. So I think they were all great. But I don't know. As much as I do enjoy certain elements of this movie as a whole, I just can't see myself wanting to revisit it. I can't really see myself wanting to spend more time in this world. And, like, I think all of Ari Aster's movies need to be thought about some more. And usually a rewatch makes me appreciate certain things more. Like, I was happy to rewatch Hereditary and Midsummer. I thought those were movies I enjoyed enough that I was happy to kind of, like, sit through it again and just kind of dive further into it and try to explore it more. And again, Beau is Afraid I haven't rewatched yet, but it's mostly because it's 3 hours long. Like, that's just a very hard. I don't know why. Maybe you would agree or disagree with me, but I find it very easy to watch a 3 hour movie in theaters. At home, I think it's like the most impossible task, and I really try to avoid doing it unless I absolutely have to. But, do I care to sit through another 2.5 hours of being very uncomfortable, watching unlikable people talk about COVID and make bad decisions? Not really. Like, it was funny at times, and I did enjoy the movie for what it was for a bit, but I don't know. I don't think I can do it again. And honestly, I was just so done with this movie by the time it got to the completely unhinged third act that I was debating giving this movie a C minus. Like, it really took it down that far. But to be fair, I try to judge a movie as a whole the best I can, and as I said, I did enjoy the first half mostly. So all in all, it's a pretty mixed bag. I can't really recommend it even for fans of Ari Aster, but then again, his movies are so controversial that maybe you will end up liking it. Maybe it'll surprise you. So I'm gonna give this movie a C. I was really hoping to enjoy it more. Maybe time will make me, think of this movie differently. By the end of the year, maybe I'll say like, you know what? Like, Eddington, I actually kind of liked it. Maybe I see a new light in it. But right now, I'm very mixed on it. All right, and next up is thoughts on trailers in movie theaters. more specifically on how long they've become. So I figured we could use a little change up on here. So let's talk about something different from a movie review. Let's talk about movie trailers. And I really like movie trailers. They get me so hyped for a movie. They're often an art form in of itself. And seeing them in a theater especially makes them even more impactful, I think. Even more so when you see it in a format like IMAX or Dolby or 3D where the sound or image really pops and you can just really like it's just a very different experience from watching it on your phone, and that goes for even watching a movie on in a theater versus on your phone or on TV. But I just think like seeing a trailer in a theater, like it's really an epic experience that can get you even more excited for a movie than you were. So I love trailers. And movie theaters have always shown a lot of trailers. Up until recently, it's been around 20 minutes of trailers before a movie, which I think that's a lot. And I know a lot of people say that's pushing it too far. I don't disagree, but I feel like 20 minutes is about as far as it can go. Like I'm okay sitting through 20 minutes of previews, and maybe you say like 20 minutes is way too much time to be sitting through previews, but I really like trailers. I love watching them, so I don't really mind 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Past that, I think it's too much. But recently, though, AMC Theaters has been under some backlash for following trends other chains have been doing since 2019. And that trend is starting trailers about 5 minutes late. So when the start time is like 6:30, you'll get about 5 minutes of ads going into that time. And then they'll start showing trailers. And then they'll show an ad sometime before the movie to get like as much viewing as possible for, like whether it be an M&M's ad or a Sprite ad, whatever it may be. They'll show the ad like right before the movie or somewhere in the middle of trailers where more people will see it. And what's begun happening is trailers are now listed at AMC specifically at 25 to 30 minutes. Before it said approximately 20 minutes of trailers, now it's listed as 25 to 30. And I've noticed this not just at AMC, but other chains as well. When I went to like a Regal a few weeks ago, movie didn't start for 30 minutes till after the showtime. And I think 30 minutes of trailers is obscene, even coming from someone who likes trailers more than probably most people on this earth like trailers. And I think it's just ridiculous. You can't do that. I think, I used to go and watch the trailers from the beginning. I used to go show up like right at the showtime and watch all 20 minutes. Now I'll show up 10 minutes after the fact for this 30-minute thing. I don't want to watch 30 minutes of trailers. Like, I'm sorry, but, especially with the amount I go to the movies, because I go, again, also more than most people on this earth, I go and I watch the same trailers over and over again, and there's only certain trailers I want to watch again. Like, I don't want to watch the trailer for M3 and 2.0, 20 times in a month. It's just not that I go 20 times a month. I don't go that many times, but it's too much to watch a single movie, a trailer. And it's just, I don't want to do that. It's just too much of my time. So I don't really want to watch that many trailers. And there's two sides to this conversation I want to talk about. One is the positives and one is the negatives. And believe me, there actually are some positives to what's going on right now. On a positive note, because I like to start off with the good, I think it's nice that we can actually predict when a movie will start more accurately. Because one of my major criticisms with theaters is that despite listing a showtime, the movie doesn't usually start anywhere near that time. And I think that's a problem. Because if you're telling people to show up at a certain time, I think you kind of owe it to them to not waste their time after that. But theaters play this game with audiences where you can either get there on time and maybe wait up to a half an hour for trailers, because even with 20 minutes of trailers that was before this, there would still be the occasional 30 minutes of trailers for like a big blockbuster. Like I remember when I saw Thunderbolts before this whole thing was even put into effect, it was still 30 minutes. And I was like, what's going on? Like, it's been forever. So I think that's a problem where you just sit there for 30 minutes waiting for the movie to start. Or the other side is you can get there late and risk missing the movie. One of my local theater chains, which is a Showcase, is incredibly unpredictable when it comes to trailers, and it's actually so frustrating. I tend not to go there because I've been there when it's been 20 minutes of trailers, and I've also been there when it's been 10 minutes of trailers, and I've even seen the movie start immediately a few times, and there were even a couple times, like in, years ago, where I literally missed like a few minutes of the movie because I just got there like 5 minutes late. So it's really a problem, and I think, AMC is typically better. Like AMC Regal, like they're better than that. But, they'll say 20 minutes of previews, and I've seen it start at only 10 or 15 minutes. So you don't know what you're getting into. And I think that's a real problem because it's kind of forcing you to get there early. It was forcing you to kind of sit through 20 minutes of trailers that you didn't want to sit through because you're like, I just don't want to miss the movie. And I just don't think that's right. So my hope is now that theaters are making an effort to list a very clear time frame and saying 25 to 30 minutes, my hope is that we can actually kind of plan out our time better. And I'd like them to stick to it so that way we can get to the theater and just kind of do what we want accordingly. Only time will tell if theaters do stick to this. I really hope they do. But if they do, then I'm willing to forgive the 30 minutes of trailers a bit more because then I can actually arrive when I want to instead of feeling pressured to be there well in advance. Like if you tell me, it's a 6:30 movie, then I can show up at 7 or 6:55 and I'll know that I can make the movie. So I think that's at least a plus. But on the other side of things, I do think there are some negatives to share. One is that because they added so many trailers, people are just not going to show up for a lot of them. And I don't care if people miss trailers, like personally, but the studios do. They're paying all this money to market the movies and show them in theaters. But if people don't watch the trailers, then it's pointless. Like, I believe it was even the CEO of Sony Pictures who is very upset right now about the whole thing, specifically because fewer people will stick around for trailers. And it's like that's part of the point. Like, you're trying to advertise a movie coming out. Like, you're trying to get people's awareness for a movie coming out, but you can't do that if people aren't sticking around to watch it. If people, like, let's say Warner Brothers is trying to market Superman, and they're like, let's put a trailer for Superman before every big major blockbuster coming out so people will really be aware of it when it's coming out. And if people just skip most of the trailers, and Superman's shown in the first half of trailers, then no one's going to know about it. You couldn't be paying so much money for people who aren't going to watch the trailer. And I totally understand the studio's point in that because it's not right. So I just really don't like that. And the other thing is I don't love the idea of having ads right before a movie. Like when I'm inside a theater, I kind of want to block out the outside world. I want to be immersed in what I'm watching as much as possible. And it doesn't really coincide with getting an ad for the new Samsung phone or Geico insurance right before my movie starts. That's not what I want. I can get that before the trailers start. I can get the ads right then when I'm, sitting down in my seat, but I don't need to watch a Sprite commercial right before my movie. I don't want that. And going off of that, I think my main issue with the way trailers are right now in movie theaters is that we as customers are paying a premium to see a movie at a theater. We're paying, $15-20 to go buy a ticket, see a movie, maybe a little less if you're doing like A-List or Regal Unlimited or whatever. But it's frustrating that the theaters think it's okay to not only show 30 minutes of trailers, but then also show commercials well past the time they told us to get there for the movie. Like, I just think on paper that sounds so messed up. Like, they're telling you show up at 6:30 for a movie. We're going to charge you like $15 a ticket, maybe 20 if you do IMAX or something. And then we're going to make you pay, $20 for a popcorn and soda. And then you're going to have to sit through 30 minutes of trailers for your movie to start. Like, that's just not a way to do business, in my opinion. That's a really bad business model, and I think it just makes people feel bad. Like, if you tell people, like, why are movie theaters not doing as well anymore? Why aren't people going? I think that's a huge reason, because the value proposition isn't as strong anymore. It's like, even taking away the things of, like, oh, people are noisy, people are annoying, they're on their phones, whatever. And that stuff is, I think, even worse, but it doesn't matter how good the experience is. I think people don't want to show up when they're like, well, I have to plan my entire night around going to a movie. I have to drive 20 minutes to get to the theater. I got to get online for popcorn. I then have to wait for trailers, which who knows how long that's going to be. And then I even have to watch an ad right before the movie, and I'm paying all this money. So it's like, what's the reason to go to a movie theater anymore? And I think the whole problem with these trailer things is a very big part of that. And, going back to the thing with ads, like, it's fine if it's free, like cable TV, where you're not paying money to go see a movie. Like, if you're just going in for a press screening or something, and you're, or a fan screening, and it's free, and they want to show an ad before the movie, it's like, okay, you can spend as much time as you want on that. but we're literally paying money on streaming to get rid of ads. Why are movie theaters the exception here? Why should we pay $20 for a ticket, be told to get there at a specific time, and then watch a quarter of a movie's worth of trailers and ads? Like, I don't know. I just think the amount of trailers and everything is getting very tiring. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. I love trailers. Like, I want to watch the trailers. And I still will watch the trailers. I'll get there like 20 minutes early, probably, or 15 minutes early to watch a lot of the trailers. But to me, I think you either have two options. You either have to specify the exact start time of a movie so audiences can get to the theater when they want to. And I believe there's actually, it was like a lawyer or a lawmaker, someone in Connecticut who was actually, I think, trying to get this put into effect. I don't think anything's happened with it yet, but if it does, I'll probably talk about it at some point. So hopefully that happens, because I think it would be really nice to have people be aware of when the movie's actually going to start, instead of just kind of this estimated time frame where they may or may not miss part of the movie. Or better yet, I think the best solution here is just reduce the amount of trailers to 10 minutes. Have the big studios who want to pay the money for trailers, like, let them show their trailers. And, you can show a couple ads in there if you really want to, if it really helps, because I understand why, but everyone's happy that way. And, I was just kind of starting to say, like, I understand why theaters love having so many ads. Like, I think putting, kind of going into their shoes for a second, they get more money via concessions because, if they show 20 minutes of trailers or 30 minutes of trailers, when you get to the theater, you have time to go get concessions before the movie. Like, if you show up at 6:30 for a 6:30 movie, you have 20 minutes to go get whatever the hell you want from concessions, and you can go take that time. You're not going to feel rushed. They can get more money out of you that way. And the studios also, it's good for them because they pay more money to the theaters. The theaters get money from the studios, and then they can show trailers. So they're getting money from there. And then the new ad revenue thing where they're getting probably like a certain amount of money. I forgot how much, but if they show an ad right before the movie, they get a certain amount of money for how many people watch the ad. So they're getting money from that too. And the theaters are like, yeah, this is good money. We're getting more money now from this, and we can actually kind of survive. Because theaters are just the thing with theaters is they're not making money from ticket sales or anything like that. They're really making all their money from concessions. So they're thinking the more we can get, you as an audience to get concessions and watch the end of our trailers now because you'll get ad money, is a win for the theater. But I don't know. I feel like there really has to be a better alternative without alienating the customers who rely on you for business. I feel like there must be a way where you can show some trailers, make money from the studios, still make your money on concessions, and then just have audiences feel happy too that you're not like ripping them off. So I don't know. It's really a problem. I hope they kind of figure out a better solution. I mean, in the meantime, I'm happy that at least like they're giving a more definitive time for a movie to start, but this needs to get better. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.